It was a simple plan, right? Buy a pinhole camera. By definition, the simplest type of camera. Go out into the world and shoot pictures of beautiful things, come back and sell them. A simple plan. But George Patton said, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. And in this case, the enemy is film. I was just gonna ship it off to the lab and they were gonna develop it and scan it for me and send the files back, and then I was just gonna take them to the printer and it was gonna be done. It was gonna be done. And then I realized that wasn't gonna work. All these years that I shot film, and then finally I was like, no more, I'm never developing film at home again. Now I'm sitting here smelling like chemicals and I've got negatives hanging in my shower. Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. If you're just tuning in, I am Gribbly, and this is my ongoing folly. And man, is the folly real in this episode. I am now 10 rolls in. Is that true? No, I think I'm 8 or 9 rolls in to my Pinhole Project. And the issue is that I left the comfortable confines of what I know and love, black and white analog photography. I left it for color. Now this might get a little technical, but don't worry. I'm gonna say offensive things about people to keep you interested. The only people left shooting film professionally are landscape photographers with some sort of alternative process, or hipsters with their parents' trust fund. I don't have a trust fund, so I guess I'm the former. Kodak, represent. Actually, I was never that big a Kodak fan. I shot Ilford back in my prime when I was solely a black and white film shooter back in the day, before I got treatment for my anxiety disorder, and I would never have shot color then because I just couldn't take it. But for this project, I thought color would be the way to go because color images are gonna sell better, right? That's generally a thought in the photography world. If you hang a color image and a black and white image next to each other on the wall, people will buy the color image first. Which meant that I couldn't rest on my laurels. I couldn't use my volumes of photographic knowledge about black and white process. I had to go out and find something new to work with. Now I've shot color films. I actually, one of the films I'm gonna discuss, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I went and looked at the Instagram feed of my favorite pinhole photographer, whose name is Zeb Andrews. His Instagram handle is @lensoptional. Phenomenal photographer, and he almost exclusively uses Kodak Ektar 100, which is a very nice color film. Now, back in the day, when I was getting ready to say, back in the day, I actually tested Ektar for Kodak on my photography blog when I was a super nerd. I don't have that blog anymore. But yeah, I did a review on Ektar. Ektar is a super saturated film with really fine grain, and it's ISO 100. And like I said, this is gonna get technical, and I need to say offensive things to balance that out. Hang on, let me think of something. Okay, here we go. This will offend some photo nerds. T-grain films are better. It's not really true. I always shot HP5 or Tri-X. Okay, so it is actually true. All right, shush. Anyway, I bought 5 rolls of Ektar and went out and shot them. And the problem that I had was my exposures were in the tens of minutes. Like a short exposure was 4 minutes. And I can't do that. I have a very limited amount of time to do this, and my biggest expense, I hope my biggest expense in this project is actually driving to the places that I want to shoot, right? So when I get there, I need to shoot more than like 1 or 2 photos a night. But there's nothing else that really looks like Ektar. It's basically slide film in color negative form. It's a beautiful film, although not great for portraits. Anyway, I then decided I would have to switch films to Kodak Portra. And I say I then decided. Basically, I was curled up in the fetal position under my desk, like freaking riddled with agony over this. Do I want the better colors or do I want more speed? Well, I looked at the images that were coming out of the Ektar, and if anything, they were too colorful. They were just too much too much going on. Too much going on. I wanted the more muted colors of Kodak Portra, which I don't think are really muted. I would call them natural. Portra 400 is an amazing film, by the way. But I still prefer black and white. I'm just doing this for my fans. So I bought 10 rolls of Portra 400. And then I looked at my balance sheet for this project, and that was uncomfortable. I had the camera, I had the tripod, I had all the gear, I had the film, but if I ever wanted to see the images I was producing, I was gonna have to spend, like for 10 rolls, I was gonna have to spend another like $225 to get this stuff developed and scanned. Add to that the fact that you're gonna spend at least, like the big problem with the Ektar, right, was that I didn't test it thoroughly enough, and then I went out shooting and I wasted some film. I mean, not wasted, but like, yeah, pretty much wasted. And so now I'm switching films. So you gotta run all the tests all over again before you even start shooting in earnest. How did people survive? How did photographers make a living doing this back in the day before digital? I just don't that was me. I did it, but I don't even remember what that was like, having to like make these tests. But well, it was shooting, I mean, film was a lot cheaper. You were doing everything yourself. I was shooting 35 millimeter. And seriously, I have no interest in ever shooting 35 millimeter again. It's a terrible format. There, was that offensive? The terrible format. 35 millimeter, completely worthless. So that's how I ended up doing a cost comparison between sending my film out to be developed and buying the stuff necessary to develop it at home. Developing at home saves me $15.67 per roll. That's how much money it saves me. And so I had this, I had 10 rolls of Portra, and I added it up, and in those 10 rolls, I would start saving money if I developed at home. So I did it. Here I am, back at rock bottom. Analog photography is like poison ivy. Terrible itchiness, but it feels really good to scratch it. I have to admit that I love this process. That it turns me on in a way that digital photography does not, when you have to actually like physically develop your images. There's something about it that really floats my cork. It's a ritual. It's a meditation. You open the camera and you pull the film and you attach the film to the spools. I mean, and then you close the camera, and if you screw that up, you've ruined all your images. Isn't that awesome? Or is it more awesome to shoot all the images perfectly, come home, go through the exact instructions that you're supposed to, and then ruin them in post-processing? Did I say post-processing? Because I meant processing. This is analog. There is no post. All the Portra I have developed at home has a terrible blue color shift that makes it completely unusable. And there's good images in there. There's good images that I'm gonna have to convert to black and white if I ever want to show them. Here are some now. I think I have narrowed the problem down to temperature changes during the development, meaning like after I've poured the developer into the tank, the change in temperature. I'm doing a pre-soak. Listen, nerds, don't get uppity with me. I'm doing a pre-soak. But I am not keeping the tank in the bath as I'm developing. So maybe there's that. There's going to be a whole video on this, by the way. You don't get off that easy. I'm at an impasse, right? I've got a few rolls of Portra left, and basically I need to shoot some tests. I need to go out and shoot some actual, like, colorful images, come home, and try to develop them in a way that retains the correct colors. Because if I can't do that, I might as well be shooting black and white, which is really what I want to do anyway. Has this all been an elaborate scheme to get me back into shooting black and white film? I don't think so, but the subconscious is a tricky thing. And I did it for so many years, and it was a formative part of my development as a human being, was shooting black and white film. And I mean, I got philosophical with it. And it's calling, man. It's whispering in my ear and saying, come back, Gribbs. Come back. And then my wife like sees the negatives hanging in the shower and she's like, you know we're not those people anymore, right? Like the kid is covered in mud and paint and like apple juice and whatever else he's gotten into that day. And she's like, yeah, he really needs a bath. And I'm like, those negatives have to dry for the next 4 hours. Sorry. The process makes me feel like a kid again, though. Like I'm in my early 20s and I'm thinking I'm hot shit for knowing how to develop black and white film, you know. But it also makes me feel like I'm in my early 20s in terms of, you know, not being able to function because of my anxiety. I say all that to say this. If you're following this project, you're in for a wild ride. And by wild, I mean, please hold my hand while I cry. I've already started looking at some of the cameras that I sold years ago. Years ago, I sold these cameras and was like, I'm never going to need this again. Go off into the world, find a hipster to love you. Now I'm looking at them on eBay and I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty clean copy. I don't think that lens has any fungus. I'm just going to sit here, calm my nerves with my pipe, my Dagner poker full of Old Dark Fired and some nice black coffee and just relax. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to chill out and not worry about the grain structures and all these different black and white films and the fact that my favorite black and white film for pinhole work is now discontinued. Thank you, Fuji. They're kind of an analog, actually. See, get the pun, between pipe smoking and film photography, which is that all the good, the things you've loved for years are starting to disappear, and everyone's freaking out about it, and it's getting more expensive, and probably pretty soon the government will regulate them both. And we will be outlaws together here on the Gribbly's Folly channel. Thank you so much for listening to me rant about things you almost assuredly don't care about. Keep the ends out for the ties that bind.